Good day and welcome to the Q4 and FY20 earnings conference call of Spandana Sphoorti Financial Limited. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company which are based on the beliefs, opinions and expectations of the company as on the date of this call. These statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Ms. Padmaja Reddy, Managing Director of Spandana Sphoorti Financial Limited. Thank you, and over to you, ma'am.
Good morning and welcome you all to the Q4 and FY20 financial and business update call of Spandana. Apologies for starting the call late. Due to some technical issues, there was a delay. During the quarter, we recorded very strong growth and we have set new benchmarks and made many breakthroughs. The AUM grew by 56% YOY from 5,879 crore to 6,829 crore. In absolute value, the portfolio grew by 950 crore in the quarter. We continue to be the third largest microfinance institution in terms of AUM. The AUM grew by CAGR of 74% from FY17 to March 20. The book grew by more than 5 times from 1,300 crore to 6,829 crore from FY17 since we exited from corporate debt restructuring. We were 8th largest in March 2017 when we exited from CDR, and in 2 years, our position in the market moved from being 8th largest to 3rd largest. We disbursed 2,324 crore in this quarter. This is the highest ever that we have disbursed in a quarter. Disbursements grew by 61% YOY from 1,390 crore. We opened 85 new branches in the last 1 year. By the end of the year, we had 1,010 branches. Number of borrowers increased by 5% quarter on quarter from 24.5 lakh to 25.7 lakh. We expanded to 3 new districts in the last quarter, thus making the total number of operating districts to 280. Employees increased by 24% YOY from 6,655 to 8,224. The top 3 states exposure has further come down from 56% to 46% YOY. District level diversification is very much intact with 211 districts out of total 280 districts having less than 0.5% of the total portfolio. Except 13 districts, all other districts have less than 1% of the total portfolio. These 13 districts also have less than 2% of the total portfolio. In fact, no district has more than 2% of the total portfolio. State level, district level and branch level diversification helped us to do more and more assignment and securitization deals, and we raised 3,777 crore through PTC and direct assignments in the last 1 year. Assigned and securitized portfolio increased from 804 crore to 2,407 crore. As a percentage on total portfolio, DA plus PTC portfolio increased from 18% last year, 2019, to 35% by 2020. We continued our stellar performance on efficiency, profitability and productivity parameters during the quarter. We achieved a number of breakthroughs and we have set many benchmarks for the industry. Operating cost further reduced by 70 basis points from 4.6%. It has come down to 3.9%. This is sub 4% and this is lowest across the industry. It is a new benchmark that the company has set for itself and for the industry. Cost to income has further improved from 24.9%. It has come down to 19.9%. This is again sub 20%. Gross NPA and net NPA stood at 0.36% and 0.07%. In this quarter, we have provided for 188 crore towards provision and write-off, of which 59 crore is normal provision and write-off, and 129 crore that we made towards COVID and other provisions. For full year, the provision and write-off is 274 crore. Total write-off for the year has been 125 crore. Portfolio impacted in a few districts of Karnataka, the Udupi, Dakshin Kannada and Shimogga. So we have completely cleaned up that portfolio, and also few districts of Maharashtra, Kolhapur and Sangli due to floods. So that portfolio has been completely cleaned up. These two states, the written off portfolio accounts for almost 64 crore. Average AUM per branch increased in a year from 4.7 crore to 6.76 crore YOY. Average AUM per employee also increased. This is not for loan officer, this is per employee. It increased from 80 lakhs to 1 crore. This is still lower than our In this quarter, we also raised 1,409 crore through DA and 533 crore through term loans. Total borrowings raised in the quarter were 1,942 crore. Cost of borrowing declined by 160 basis points from 13.5% to 11.9% YOY. And marginal cost of borrowing reduced from 11.3% to 10.2%. Cost of funds on AUM reduced from 9.6% to 7.8%. So this is YOY. Net interest margin further increased by 70 basis points from 15.9% to 16.6% YOY. Net interest income for the quarter grew by 56% YOY to 263 crore from 168 crore. Operating profit before provisions for the full year has been 892 crore as against 519 crore for FY19. Pre-provision profit grew by 72% compared with 56% growth in portfolio. So this is much higher than what we projected and what we shared with the market. PBT for full year increased by 31% to 618 crore from 473 crore. This is after making 129 crore additional provision towards COVID. PBT would have been 747 crore without COVID provision. PAT reported after adjusting DTA is 352 crore as against 312 crore, which is of 13% growth. Pre-tax ROA for the quarter is 6.8%, which is down from 10.2% YOY, and this is purely because of 129 crore additional provision we made towards COVID. Post-tax ROA stood at 5.2%, which is lower by 180 basis points YOY, and this is again because of COVID provisions that we made. Capital adequacy ratio increased from 40% to 53%. This is again because of the profits that we added to the network, and leverage further reduced from 1.6 times to 1.1, and this is again because of off-balance sheet portfolio that we have. And net worth increased from 1,889 crore to 2,626 crore YOY with an increase of 39%. Free cash and liquid investments as on March stood at 547 crore. On-time collection efficiency for the quarter has been 98.52%. So with this, I will move to the COVID stuff. So we gave an update to analysts like in terms of what happened like till 25th March, and I will take you through in terms of what has happened subsequently. So starting from 21st March 2020, in light of the increasing cases of COVID, we stopped loan disbursements as a precautionary measure following the central government's announcement of a complete lockdown from 24th March 20. We also closed down all our branches and head office operations, suspending collections and also other operations. So communication via text messages and calls have gone out to all our borrowers about the ongoing lockdown situation and our inability to reach out to them and conduct center meetings until the lockdown period. So we implemented work from home for all the head office staff due to Spandana's flexible cloud-based IT architecture. This shift has been seamless and all our operations continue to function effectively during the lockdown period. And subsequently, pursuant to the order issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs on 15th April 2020, we resumed our operations in a phased manner from 20th April. Based on the initial assessment of our branches in COVID zones, we started operations in almost 790 branches, and Spandana was at the forefront in terms of resuming operations and the first MFI to have such a large proportion of its branches active by 25th April. So by now, all our branches commenced operations with more than 92% of the field staff reporting to their respective locations. All our branches started collecting installments from the borrowers who did not wish to opt for the moratorium. Since we resumed operations on 20th April, the traction in collections till date has been very encouraging. However, our loan officers were not able to meet each and every borrower scheduled for the week or day. This is because our loan officers meet our borrowers in center meetings, but due to COVID distancing norms, they are engaged in group-wise collections and in few cases individual collections compared to center-based collections earlier. Also, travel time to each borrower's house and additional time spent to address each of the borrower's queries reduce the number of borrowers a loan officer could meet in a day. However, there has been significant improvement in the collections from the first week that we resumed operations to now. We so far collected 165 crore and we are expecting to collect over 300 crore in the month of June. So we have 91% of our borrowers and 90% of the total AUM in rural area. Fortunately, COVID impact in rural areas has been very minimal so far and has hence not impacted our borrower base in a significant fashion. Even if certain pockets of COVID do emerge, our extremely diversified footprint has less impact on our entire portfolio. Moreover, most rural microfinance borrowers engage in agriculture activity and dairy activity. These two activities were very much intact, and dairy alone accounts for 56.7% of our borrower base. Since both these are essential items, income continues to flow to the rural households. As their income is largely unaffected, their ability to pay is also not impacted. Additionally, the government also announced a series of economic relief measures for rural India, which will further support our borrowers' repayment capacity is what we are envisaging. Finally, considering many of our borrowers are in their third or higher cycle, we have strong confidence in their ability to withstand any impact from COVID and manage the household cash flows as well to repay the loans. And we also believe that like Spandana, with its 16 years of microfinance experience, has withstood multiple crises in the microfinance space across its journey, and hence it is uniquely experienced to navigate the current situation. Starting from 2010 Andhra crisis, Spandana demonstrated its operational excellence by being one of the only two MFIs to come out of CDR and the only MFI to have collected a substantial portion of its AP portfolio since 2010. We are the only MFI that has collected over 45% of AP portfolio. So during Demon as well, the company demonstrated its strength in terms of asset quality versus the industry. Our PAR 0 was 60% lower than the industry average. So this also enabled us to resume our business operations strongly, recording a strong 144% growth in AUM in the year following demonetization. Spandana also has navigated through multiple smaller political interventions and natural calamities very successfully in the recent times to record a stable and industry-leading profitability. So we continue to receive strong support from our lenders during Q4 and March 2020 as well. So during Q4, we raised a total amount of 1,942 crore, of which 1,262 crore through assignment transactions and 147 crore was raised through securitization transaction. So during lockdown itself, so we raised 848 crore. And again of this, 31st March, we did a direct assignment with State Bank of India. We raised 490 crore, and again we raised another 300 crore from NABARD in the month of April. So we are super confident in terms of getting support from all other lenders. And so we also got moratorium from 68% of the lenders, but however, we repaid all the installments, so those are due in the month of March and also in April. So we just availed to the extent of 30 crore in the month of May. So however, like we are current to all the lenders and we repaid every installment, even to the lenders who have given us moratorium. So I think in the month of April and May till date, like we repaid over 600 crore to all the lenders. And as we have significant portfolio, which is our balance sheet, whatever the collections that we are doing, to the extent of our balance sheet portfolio, we have been transferring to the lenders. So with this overview, now I open the floor to questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Anyone who wishes to ask a question at this time, then please press star and 1. The first question is from the line of Nandita Vaidya from Nirmal Bang Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, please go ahead, Nandita.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. I had just one question. It was regarding the net gain that you have mentioned. It's a pretty high amount compared to the past quarters. It's about 108 crores. So could you give me a breakup of all this or an explanation regarding this amount, please? Because that's the reason the PBT is also pretty high.
Sure. So, hi. The reason why the upfront income on the recognition of financial instruments is high because of the high DA volume during Q4. Like we had guided back in Q3 during the investor call, Q4 is the highest quarter in terms of the value of DA transactions that we did, which is 1,262 crores. The previous quarters we had looked at, we had completed transactions worth 500 to 700 crores only, but this quarter was high. And generally, about 9% of the DA value transaction gets recorded as an upfront income. This is based on the discounting and all of that. And the requirement for why this appears in the P&L is because of the Ind AS requirements, wherein when we sell the DA portfolio, the excess interest spread that we earn on the portfolio from the lender. For example, if the portfolio is yielding, let's say 24%, and we are able to do a transaction at 10%, the remaining 14% comes back to Spandana, and that 14% will come over a period of time, which could be about 21 months. However, Ind AS requires us to discount this entire cash flow of over the 21 months to the current present value, and then recognize that in the P&L and recognize that as an asset in the balance sheet. As and when we recognize this cash over a period of time, it gets offset from the asset.
Okay. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anand Trivedi from Nepean Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. My first question is that your cost to income ratio at the fourth quarter has come down substantially. And this is despite the fact that you have grown your business quite smartly. So can you explain that a little bit, please?
If you could notice, the growth has come from the existing branches and the growth has come from existing districts. So we have not really grown into new geographies and we have not really expanded to new states. So we have not opened many new branches. And again, even the growth has come from existing borrowers per se. So as such, like there was so much to leverage in terms of existing branches, existing borrowers. So as such, proportionately, if you look at the portfolio grew by how much? The portfolio grew by 56%. So, but again, like if you see the growth in operating cost last year to this year, not percentage, absolute value. So like, and again, employees, the growth in employees is 24%. So that's where like you can make out. Employees grew by 24%, portfolio grew by 56%, which means like by increasing 20 employees by 24%, we are able to grow portfolio by 56%. So which means the growth has come from existing branches, the growth has come from existing borrowers.
And is this a sustainable cost to income ratio in your opinion, or you think there's more room for downside or upside in this?
I'll be happy like if it doesn't go down further. So if you just look at like the average portfolio per branch, so it is still lower. So there is further room to increase the loan outstanding per branch. So if we compare our numbers with the industry average is like around 8-9 crore. So for example, Bharat Finance, for example, Credit Access, their average loan outstanding per branch is like 8 crore, 9 crore, versus our average loan outstanding per branch is like 6.7 crore. Once like our average loan outstanding per branch increases to 8 crore or 9 crore, I think like it will further go down.
Okay, fine. And my next question is, if I understand correctly, you've come up with a press statement saying that your CFO and your company secretary have resigned. Could you explain that? What is the reason for that?
So what is being stated to me, he is sitting next, he can better answer that question. So basically he is not comfortable in terms of spending time in Hyderabad. So basically like he has friends, family, everything in Bangalore and Chennai. So like he is in the process of having like wife is expecting. So like they're planning to have. Yeah, maybe Sudesh can answer.
Yeah, due to the personal reasons that ma'am mentioned, so we are preferring to go back to a city where our parents are based. So that is the reason as to why I'm leaving. There is no other issue.
Okay, and what about the company secretary? I believe he resigned as well.
Yeah, Rakesh is actually getting married and so he's moving cities, moving closer to his parents who are based in Jaipur.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, I'd like to remind our participants to limit their questions to 2 per participant. If time permits, you may join the question queue for any follow-up. Thank you. The next question is from the line of Lalita Srivastava from Sharekhan. Please go ahead. Lalita, your line is unmuted. Please unmute yourself and respond.
Hello. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
thanks a lot for the opportunity and congratulations on a good quarter. 2 small questions, ma'am. First of all, your percentage of borrowers under moratorium, how that percentage has moved over, say, last 15 days or 1 month. And secondly, your run rate breakup, which you have provided on the provisions, apart from the COVID-19 provision as well, we see the provisions for standard assets, etc., also going up significantly on a sequential basis. So, if you can please help us understand what went in there. Thank you.
0.4 to 0.9%.
I'll take the second question first. So as per the Ind AS requirement, we will have to update the ECL model year on year once we complete a financial year. So till December 2019, we had used the model in which the losses till FY 19 was considered, and when we finished March 2020, then we had to consider the losses if there were any or excess or lower for FY 20 as well. However, because of flood incidences in multiple states during 2019 and 2020, the provision requirement in stage 1 increased from 0.4% to 0.9%. However, at the same time, in stage 2 and stage 3, the provision requirement came down, because even though the portfolio moved to stage 2, for example, our stage 2 is 31 to 90, because of flood, a borrower could miss 2-3 installments, so she moves into the stage 2 bucket, and then eventually the losses would come down because she will start repaying with a lag. So that got reflected in stage 2 and stage 3, where the provision requirement, for example, in stage 3 came from 89% to 80%. And in stage 2 from 59% to 50%. So it is only an interstage movement and a temporary increase in provision. However, we are comfortable with the provision requirement shown by the model for stage 1 as well.
And again, one more thing, like as per the model, as per the ECL model, like we don't have to write off more than 60 days. But however, like if you see more than 60 days, like we have completely written off. And again, as I mentioned in my earlier note, that the Karnataka portfolio, like which was impacted due to external interference, and again Maharashtra portfolio which got impacted due to floods. So that itself is like about 64 crore. So that was completely cleaned up. So even like the standard provision was, as you rightly mentioned, it was little high. And again, the bucket 1, like it's almost 0.9%. Yeah, provision got more than double. And the first question, like in terms of borrowers, what was it? Like I did not understand.
So ma'am, the percentage of borrowers under moratorium and how that number has behaved over the last, say 15 days or a month.
Basically, like I think rural, it was only like the borrowers that we were able to meet. So in our experience is like 80% of the borrowers that we were able to meet, like they preferred paying their installment. So in the as I said that like we started meeting borrowers and collecting installment like from 20th April. So we were able to meet over like 6 lakh borrowers, and out of that, like by now, like 5,60,000 borrowers, like they paid their installment. So 80% of the borrowers that like we are meeting, so they are paying their installment. So, but again, the difficulty is like in terms of meeting each and every borrower. So one, like the center meetings are not happening. So as such, like either group meetings or like we are meeting borrowers on individual basis. This is really taking lots of time. Initially, like there were teething issues, in logistics issues, because there were many problems that we faced in terms of resuming branches. There were issues in terms of landlords. So there were like problems in terms of like neighbors not letting our staff to enter into the branches, like because they were coming from containment zones, they were coming from red zones. And again, like initially, like the staff had issues in terms of crossing the borders. So like it took its own time like for the staff to report in the branches in the first place. Now, as per the process, like per day the loan officer is scheduled to meet like almost 150 borrowers. In a normal course of time, as per the center meeting process, he spends like a minute per borrower. But now like to meet and again convince the borrower and explain and answer all her queries, it is really taking such a long time. So we are not in a position to meet like all the borrowers as per the schedule. So that is where we are not able to meet all the borrowers as per the schedule. But however, 80% of the borrowers, if we are able to meet them and if we are able to address all their queries, and once like we explain to them that like if you opt moratorium, like this is the scenario, so there is an additional interest like that is payable to that extent, there is a delay in terms of getting the next loan. Most of them like they are preferring in terms of repaying the loan and getting the next loan on time.
Mr. Srivastava, may I request you to join the queue for any follow-up, as we have several participants waiting for their turn.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot.
That is how like they are able to collect 165 crore till date.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. The participants are requested to please limit their questions to 2 participants. We move to the next question, that is from the line of Kabir from Carpe Diem Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. Just a couple of quick questions. One is that on the collections that we have seen from our borrowers in this past 15-20 days or a month, are we taking one EMI or are we taking more than one EMI at one point in time? And the second question is, how are we seeing disbursements since COVID? Have we started disbursements?
So there are a few borrowers like who have paid all their installments that are due from 1st April. So there are few borrowers like who have just paid only one installment depending upon their cash flows. So we started disbursement from yesterday. So we, however, collected loan applications since the last 1 week. So we are expecting to disburse almost like 150 to 200 crore this month. But so far,
thank you.
Disbursed a few loans against property, but microfinance loans we have still not started.
Got it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nidesh from Investec Capital. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity, ma'am. When we are expecting 300 crores of collection in the month of June, what is the collection efficiency we are building in?
That's about 50% overall, but again, like that's very, very conservative. So yesterday, for example, like some branches, like they reported 100% collection efficiency, and AP state, like all branches in AP, they reported 85% collection efficiency. But however, like some of the states, the collection efficiency is little low. So, but again, like to be on a safer side, so overall, like the collection efficiency with 300 crore collection is 50%.
Sure. And as you mentioned that almost 80% of the customers you are meeting are able to pay. So remaining 20% of the customers will avail additional moratorium or do you expect them to start?
Basically 10% of the borrowers are in urban areas, so they might.
Okay. And just lastly, one observation which RBI has made on the interest rate, and you mentioned that in the footnotes that you have addressed that by reducing the interest rates. So what is the interest rate now we are charging to the customers?
No, in June. June. We are now charging 21.55% interest rate. But however, like this is till December, like we had AP portfolio on our balance sheet. So it's only in December, like we completely wrote off the old AP portfolio. So till December, so we were without generating any interest income on old AP portfolio. So we were in fact even servicing the corresponding debt related to AP old portfolio. So but however, like in December, we were able to write off complete AP portfolio. So it's only in the last quarter, January, February, March, so we had 100% interest generating portfolio on our balance sheet. So with that ability in terms of 100% portfolio generating interest, so we reduced the interest rate for the first time. So now we are charging 21.55%.
Thank you. Nidesh, request you to join the question queue for any follow-up.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rajiv Mehta from Yes Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Again, with regards to this pricing reduction, so, ma'am, are you saying that it will not affect our profitability or NIMs, after having reduced pricing as per the RBI's observation?
Not really. To that extent, like if you see, our cost of borrowing has been coming down significantly. So in 2017, like if you see, our cost of borrowing was as high as 14%, 15%. So today, like it has come down to almost like 9% and 8%. And that too, like while we are doing a significant, like we are raising so much of borrowing to our balance sheet. And that is like at 8% and 7.5%. Over a period of time, like the cost of borrowing has substantially come down. And again, like with the leverage, like with the average loan outstanding increasing at the branch level, so the cost, operating cost is also reducing. So I don't think that like, and if you see, like the NIM has further increased.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The question was, since we have to price our loans based on the cost of borrowing, so if any which ways, the top up on the cost of borrowing was as per the guideline. So what did RBI has an observation about or had a view on? Because I believe that we had a similar, would it be right to put in context that there was an observation by RBI even in 2018, in FY18, with regards to pricing? Are both the observations similar in nature in terms of pricing, differences as per their, interpretation?
Yeah, there is no conclusion on that. So RBI has finally written to the pricing division, policy division in corporate office. So they're waiting for a revert from Mumbai on that.
Got it. And ma'am, any assessment of, the impact of cyclone Amphan, impacting Orissa? And we have a significant portfolio in Orissa. So any assessment and whether this COVID provisions, because it says that it's for COVID and for other write-offs. So does it include an element of this, cyclone impact as well?
It has not impacted Orissa that badly. I think like that cyclone Amphan has impacted West Bengal, but there is no much of impact, fortunately, in Orissa.
Okay, so that is good to know. And ma'am, just last one question was with regards to collecting from individual group members. So how are we approaching this such type of collection? Because is it still approached at a group level that the group knows that every individual is paying the installment individually, with the loan officer going to him, or so that the discipline or the entire group pays, if somebody doesn't pay in a group, at a time in one installment, because you said that somebody is paying few installments together, somebody is paying one installment. So is it disturbing the group coherence or group working then in that case?
So basically, like instead of conducting center meetings, what we are doing is like we are conducting group meetings. So like for us, like a center was always an administrative unit, but we never have taken a center guarantee. It was always group guarantee. So it's only like 3 groups were coming together as a center, but in terms of giving guarantee and in terms of cohesiveness and all, like it was always a group. But right now, like because 30 people coming together and again, like it will unnecessarily create a kind of visibility issue and all. So we are not conducting center meetings, but we are conducting group meetings.
So would we continue with similar methodology when we assume
But in the group, like for example, if the group has 10, if 5 of them are availing moratorium and 5 of them like they have a better cash flows, they want to repay, we are fine with that. Like we are taking installments from 5. So that should not be an issue at all. And again, like there is an understanding within the group that these 5 they can avail moratorium, these 5 can repay. So that's a group decision.
Thank you. Mr. Mehta, request to join the question queue for any follow-up. The next question is from the line of Sagar Shah from Alphaline Wealth Advisors. Please go ahead.
Hello, good morning, ma'am. I just had one question actually. As far as our cost of borrowing goes, going ahead due to our credit rating and due to all banks, including private and public banks, are decreasing their lending rates. So do we expect our cost of borrowing to come down even in the next year?
So we have banks and we are also borrowing from NBFCs, and right now like we are also raising money through NCDs. So and again if I see the borrowings through our balance sheet, yes, like it is going down. But again if I see term loans and if I put like all the costs together, so there is a cash deposit and there is a processing fee. There is an interest, like all inclusive, it is still working out to almost like 11.5 to 12%. And again, if we look at like NBFCs, like we have substantial exposure to NBFCs, so their cost is like almost like 12 to 12.5%. And again, if I look at like the cost of NCDs, so it is very, very high. And again, like of late, like we have been working on some offshore funding. So the cost of offshore funding is very, very high. So they are quoting anywhere like 13-14%. So it's not that like it's only the development-oriented institutions. For example, SIDBI and NABARD like on LTRO, like which is linked to repo rate options. So it is lower, but otherwise like overall like there is no substantial reduction in the cost of borrowing. So it is and again. There is a leeway in terms of our balance sheet. Like in any case, when it comes to pricing our loans, we don't have to consider that. So that benefit is always there. So that is coming at a lower rate, and we don't have to consider that while pricing our loans.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shripal Doshi from Equirus Securities. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Just one question. Based on your interaction, you said that 20% of the borrowers might need moratorium, extension of moratorium, right? Like there is just one confusion there. You said 80% of the borrowers that you are meeting are showing that they will be repaying. So there is just that confusion. So what percentage of the customers would be needing the extension of moratorium basically?
No. Basically, like this 20%, like some of those borrowers, like we could not even meet them. So, for example, like Ahmedabad branch, so Santrampur branch, so we could not even go and meet these borrowers. So, like Ahmedabad, like the situation is like very, very bad out there. So the entire region, like our borrowers, like it's still in a containment zone. And again, like till 10 days ago, like the situation in Bhopal was like very, very panicked. So same as like in Indore, and again like Pune. So some of these places, like we were not able to go and meet our borrowers. So we are just assuming that like these borrowers would want to opt moratorium. So the thing is like we were not able to go and meet these borrowers.
Okay. But we are able to contact them over the telephone, right? So
Yeah, we were able to contact them, but again, like So in terms of like, they don't have access to digital payment options. So like they did not, like, at least like even to ask them to pay their installment also. So like they are not involved in agriculture activity. They are not involved in dairy activity. They are self-employed, like because their husbands are working as taxi drivers, auto drivers. So they are, some of them like they are involved in carpentry. Some of them they are involved in construction labor work. Their academic activity got completely impacted. So we very clearly know that like they are not in a position to pay their installments. All these urban borrowers.
Okay. And then one question with respect to our Abhiram marketing related thing. What percentage of our branches are offering the consumer durable product? Like as on March, what percentage of our branches were like distributing those products?
Almost like 80% of the branches. I think like any branch, so once we open the branch, like after 6 months of opening the branch, like it will start offering the cross sale.
And what percent of our customers would have taken consumer durable products from us?
I think at any given point in time, like 5% of the borrowers will have consumer loan.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
So we have 1.5 lakh borrowers out of 25 lakh borrowers who have consumer loan active.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Deepak Siddhartha from Sapphire Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. So, first I wanted to understand on you mentioned collection of about 450 crores and disbursement of only 150 crores. So there will be some principal repayment as well in that 450 crores, right? So we do expect maybe our AUM to go down in the first quarter by about 200 to 300 crores. So any comment on your growth outlook and when do you look to resume growth in the coming quarter would be helpful.
Okay, like this quarter, basically like April, May, like so April, like there was no business, and May, like we did only collections, and of course like there was no disbursement. June is the month like we started collecting applications and we are also doing disbursement. But again from July onwards, I think like the disbursements will pick up big time. So by September, I think like we will get back to normalcy. So we are projecting almost like 600 crore kind of disbursement from September onwards.
Okay, so this 150 crores run rate, you're expecting to go to 600 crores from by September maybe, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, sure, thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sanket Chheda from B&K Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, ma'am. Congrats on very good set of numbers. Again, my question was on this cost of funds and yield. So let me know if I understand this correctly. In FY17, our cost of funds were around 20 and yields were around 29.5, which was what the regulatory requirement is. The spread should not cross 10%. And since in FY18, our cost of funds fell sharply, but the yields were not down to the commensurate levels. So this ongoing conversation with RBI is just to align this cost of funds and yields, which cost of funds have been very volatile. So as far as it would remain on a low trend or keeps coming down, our yields will also keep adjusting to that. There is nothing much to read into that conversation with RBI. Is that understanding correct?
Right now, like what we are charging is 21.5%, like which is comparable with all other large peers, large MFIs, right? And even if we go by whatever that RBI thinks is right, like which is cost of borrowing plus 10%, which is in line with that. So even if we consider that like going forward, of course, like on the existing portfolio, which is 7,000 crore, like we will continue to get 24% for the next 2 years because like we charge it 24%. But assuming that like I will get like only 22% for the next years, okay? So my yield will be 22%, okay? And then like I will get 1% processing fee. So then the yield will be 23%, 23% yield, and again like we will get 2% other income. So whatever treasury income and also like and commission income, cross sale income, like that is 2%. 25% is like my overall yield. So 25%, and again, like what is my financial cost on the portfolio? So it is 7.8, 8%. So 25 minus 8, like I have 17% NIM. So 17%, then like I am taking 2% credit cost. Okay. So then I have 15%. 15% and 4% operating cost. Again, I am liberal, though it is like sub 4%. So 11%. So my pre-tax ROA is 11%. So like here, like I have taken 23%. Look, though like I'll be getting like 24% for the next 2 years because my 7,000 crore portfolio I have lent at 24%, 24.5%. So my pre-tax ROE will still be like 11% for the next.
And sir, ma'am, the cost of borrowings, which was around 11.9% in FY20, has that come down incrementally in the 2 months of FY21? And do you expect it to come down for FY21 as a whole? Or you expect it to remain at those levels?
So this 11.55%
is for Q cost of borrowing.
No, like because if I don't want that to further come down, like because if I ask any lender to charge higher, like he'll be more than happy, right? So that is always like in my hands, right? Like because if I want.
My question was
tricked out, like I will not be able to bring it down. Like if I want to really up, so I can always make it up, right? Like because it's a kind of like a discussion with your lender, right? With the same lender, like you have a term loan, with the same lender, like you are also doing whatever off balance sheet. So while you are taking an exposure, so you can always discuss, right? Like because you are giving me 500 crore term loan, so like you charge me 200 basis points higher there, and like you charge me 200 basis points lower here, because I get a benefit, like I can transfer that there, and here like I don't have to transfer to the borrower. So it's a negotiation that you do with the lender.
And the cost of borrowing that you're seeing in the graph, that includes the PTC cost also. And this is the cost for the year, not the margin cost of borrowing. So if you were to look at the margin cost of borrowing, which also includes assignment transactions, right? I mean, where we have done sub 9% kind of transactions, that including that, it was 9.4% for Q4. Now in Q1 so far, we have taken one term loan, and there are multiple others which we will be drawing down in the next few days. We expect that to be around 11.
And this is like your cost of borrowing is 11.55%, but again like your financial cost ratio is here we have taken 8%. This is only possible for MFIs who are doing higher balance sheet transactions. And again, like why we are able to do 35% today, we have 35% of our total portfolio towards our balance sheet. So like and capital adequacy. So to be able to do like that kind of huge balance sheet transactions, one, you should have capital, like you need to have free capital to be able to generate portfolio and then sell that. And again, like you need to have super quality portfolio, because the lenders, like they will cherry pick the portfolio. And again, like you need to have fully diversified portfolio, because like the lender will not take like more than 5% from each district. He will not take like more than 10% from each state. And again, like you need to have like 100% collection efficiency, at the branch level, at the district level, at the state level. So like this is coming from that kind of capability that you are able to have 35% of your total portfolio that you could securitize. So though the cost of borrowing is 11.55%, but on the entire portfolio, my cost of fund is only 8%. So that's where like I'm getting 11% what is like ROA.
Thank you, Mr. Shreya.
I am borrowing from my NBFCs, like because as long as I am borrowing from NBFCs, so it is next to impossible for them to charge anything like which is lower than 12-13% because they are in turn borrowing from banks and they are lending to us. And again, like we are also borrowing from the market, so NCDs and all. And again, like when it comes to offshore borrowing, so like that is also very high.
Thank you. Mr. Shreya, I request you to please join the question queue for any follow-up. The next question is from the line of Moin Danawala from Tata Opportunities Fund. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity. Firstly, congratulations on the great set of numbers, phenomenal growth. I had a question related to the COVID provision. I was just trying to understand, how are we evaluating the potential losses and provisioning for the same? I'd like to add that if you look at the other companies in the MFI business, they've been provisioning, say, 1% of their overall QM as a COVID provision. When we have been more aggressive at 1.8%, 2% of our portfolio. We just wanted to understand, is this the way to look at it, or what's the right way to be able to understand the provisioning environment?
I think like if I understand the question right, like what kind of impact that we are seeing because of COVID on the overall portfolio, right? Huh?
Yes. And I was just comparing it with other peers and trying to understand that we are provisioning higher. So what's the understanding behind that?
I think our overall provision for the year, like it is about 275 crore. And out of that, like whatever the provision for the year, the standard provision for the year is 96 crore and COVID related provision 129 crore. 129 crore on 4,800 crore. In terms of percentage, like it works out to 2.7%. So towards COVID, like on our on-balance sheet portfolio, we made 2.7% this year itself. So if I look at like the overall impact of COVID, so like if I compare this with demonetization, so what happened during demonetization? The impact of demon was in very few states. So if I look at like, for example, starting from Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and again Orissa, Bihar, so there was absolutely no impact of demonetization that time. These states, like we had 100% on-time recovery. The impact of demonetization was limited to very few states. So it was in UP, the impact was very high, and again few districts of MP and few districts of Maharashtra. Having said that, and during demonetization, we did not suspend collections. So we were able to go for we were able to conduct center meetings. We were able to do collections, and so what happened differently from a normal time was, so that time like RBI gave a forbearance, and media came up with a news that some like they like there was a kind of misunderstanding that like it was not a forbearance, like it was a kind of waiver, and again like it was treated as a kind of loan repayment or holiday. So that created a sort of confusion. And again at the end of the day, So if we look at the losses that the industry has taken, so it was almost like 4 to 5%. And that too, like by MFIs, like who were able to really handle well and who were able to manage the situation extremely well and who had a kind of like very diversified operations and who did not have significant exposure to the states that in the states like those got very badly impacted because of demonetization. And again, like, and these MFIs had like very good exposure in the states like where we got 100% recovery. So contrary to that, like if we look at today, so like we were to suspend operations almost for 2 months, and like there were no center meetings. All the center meeting concept got completely disturbed. And again, like after 1.5 months, like resuming business, like it really took its own time. And even till now, like we got only 92% of the staff reported back in the branches. So another 8% of the staff, like they're yet to come. And again, like in terms of replacing 8% of the staff, whether like they have to come or like the hiring and all, it's going to take its own time. During demonetization time, like we never suspended loan disbursement. This is the first time in the last 20 years, like I have seen microfinance organizations completely suspending disbursements, completely suspending collections. So I see that like the impact will be much more higher, much more significant than what we have seen during demonetization. So that is why like we have taken higher provisions.
Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you.
The next question is from the line of Shrey Singh from Rothschild and Company. Please go ahead. Shrey, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead with the question.
Hi, I just had, I think it was partly kind of answered, but ma'am, if you could please give some sort of guidance on how do you see the percentage in terms of credit costs play out with regards to demand? For example, I know you mentioned we have already taken 2.73% of the outstanding on-book portfolio, but are we seeing any kind of incremental costs on the basis of, whatever has happened since March in terms of having additional credit costs for this year? And probably second extended question would be because of the moratorium, understanding the buckets in terms of, the customer was in a 30 DPD bucket, continues to be in a 30 DPD bucket, even post the moratorium. So in terms of his ability to take further loans, is that kind of it in terms of his ability to take further loans from either us or from other NBFC MFIs?
So that is why, like, while calculating the normalized ROA, so as against like 1% credit cost, like I have taken 2%. When I was arriving at like 11% ROA for the next 2 years, if you would have noticed, I have taken 2% credit cost. So I would prefer taking 2% credit cost for the next 2 years instead of 1%.
Understood. That's helpful.
Sorry, can you come again on the second question, please?
Sure. So the second question more on from a customer's viewpoint, for the customers who avail moratorium. I understand that the delinquency bucket does not shift during the moratorium. But in any which ways, does this impact their ability to take future loans? In the sense that, does this show up in your credit bureau checks? For example, if they were to avail or try to avail loans from other NBFC MFIs, would this become a deterrent in terms of their own credit quality?
Yeah. So since there is a moratorium too, which is available now, like we cannot show them as overdue borrowers. So as such, I don't think that like it will affect their ability in terms of taking loans from other MFIs. But however, So given a choice to any borrower, whether like she wants moratorium or like she wants loan, I think any borrower at this point in time, in terms of restarting her income generating activity, she prefers like taking loan and again moving on in life. I don't think that like MFIs would give both. So for a borrower like taking moratorium and again like giving loan doesn't really make sense. Maybe like at least like she has to show her willingness and intention by paying at least like 1 or 2 installments, if not like clearing all the overdues. So I don't think that like the borrower can avail like a blanket moratorium, not pay even 1 installment, but still take a loan. Even borrowers like understand this, rather like they will take fresh loans and again restart their income generating activity.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Request you to please join the question queue for any follow-up. The next question is from the line of Renish Bova from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. Congrats on a great set of numbers when during the most challenging time. Ma'am, couple of questions. One is on our existing borrower base, which is roughly 26 lakhs. So how much of this borrower base are unique to us? And if you can highlight how much of this borrower base would be having more than one lender?
So when we looked at this particular data last time, like around 36-37% of the borrowers are unique to us. So and again, yeah, and yeah, and around like 70-75% of the borrowers, like they have 2 lenders, including us.
Okay.
Yeah, 32. Yeah, in fact, like 32.2% of the borrowers, like they're unique to us, and 67% of the borrowers, like they have 2 lenders, including us.
Lenders, not us. Got it.
Yeah, basically lenders. So, yeah.
So, ma'am, just a clarification on that. So, when we say 2 lenders, it's 2 NBFC MFI or it is?
Yeah. When I say lenders, like it includes small finance banks and NBFC.
Okay, everyone.
Yeah, everyone.
Okay, great. And then now just, coming back to your collection expectation number, which you are, highlighting, it would be roughly 300 crore. And which is, would be translating into a 50% overall collection efficiency. But just trying to reconcile this statement, in your opening remarks, you have said that 80% of the borrowers are willing to repay. So on a conservative basis, we are building 50%, and there might be a chances of this number reaching to 80% what the borrowers are saying. Is that the correct understanding?
Yeah. For example, yesterday itself, like I have number in front of me. Yesterday we collected more than 12 crore, and yesterday, like I have a report coming from AP. So 85%. Yesterday's collection efficiency across AP was 85%. So as against the total demand in Andhra Pradesh, we got 85% collection efficiency in the state of Andhra Pradesh. So all states put together in yesterday's collection was more than 12 crore. So on a very, very conservative basis, like I have taken 50% collection efficiency for the month of June.
Got it. So, okay. Fair enough.
It will definitely be much higher.
Got it. Yeah, I just wanted to, reconfirm that reconciliation.
And again, like just to give you a sense in terms of how the collection, so while I said like yesterday itself we collected 12 crore per day, and when we started collections for full 1 week, the first week like full 1 week it was 6 crore, while like for 1 day like it was 12 crore yesterday.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. That's really helpful. And just again a follow up on the same thing. So when we collect this money, of course some part of this will go to against the off balance sheet portfolio. or this is the a collection number for Spandana standalone?
Yeah. Sorry, like repayments, like we repaid more than 600 crore to lenders. And again, in terms of collection, so like we have our balance sheet lenders, and so whatever the collections we are doing on behalf of those lenders, we are transferring to them. So that is 35%.
So this 300 crore is on AUM basis, right? It's not only on balance sheet.
Yeah. 35%, like which is 105 crore, will be transferred to those lenders. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Dua. I request you to join the question queue for any follow-up. The next question is from the line of Nishant Shah from Macquarie. Please go ahead. Nishant, your line is unmuted. Please go ahead with the question. It seems there is no response from the line of Nishant. So we will move to the next question, that is from the line of Sarvesh Gupta from Maximal Capital. Please go ahead. Sarvesh, please go ahead with the question.
We are still not able to hear you, Sarvesh.
Yeah, Sarvesh, please unmute yourself and respond.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, now we are able
Hello?
to hear you.
Yeah.
Now we are able to hear you.
Yeah. So, first question is, when you classify your borrowers as rural versus urban, is this the standard industry classification that you have used, or is this your own? And what is the percentage of people who are working as maids or working at some other home, etc., of your borrowers versus rural activity?
So we have 91% of our borrowers who are in rural. So how we classified these borrowers as rural is, so all borrowers who are living in district headquarters, municipal corporations and state capitals, so we revenue divisions, we classified them as urban. So other than these, we classified them as rural.
Okay. So even the semi-urban guys, like staying in some, suburban, etc., are classified as rural.
Yeah, municipalities, towns, district headquarters, state capitals. So those like we classified as urban.
Understood. And on the occupation, any sense that you can give, how many people are working as maids?
Basically, like as per we capture the purpose for which loan is utilized. As per that information, 57% of our borrowers they have utilized a loan for dairy purpose.
For dairy.
Dairy.
Okay, and then remaining 43.
Remaining 43, basically like there's 20 to 23%, like they have self-employment. They have small businesses like grocery shops, vegetable vending, fruit vending, and other small businesses.
And remaining
and the remaining, like they're into services. Like for example, they work as maids and they work in small shops, like into services various. They don't have their own business. They work as agriculture laborers in rural areas.
Okay. And what percentage would be from villages, either from villages or from agricultural or dairy activities? Any sense of that?
No, dairy activity is what I said. 57% of our borrowers are involved in dairy. And all of them are from rural.
Understood. In June, assuming this conservative number of 300 crores that you are planning to, so let's say from the date of lockdown till now, if you were, required to collect 100 rupees in total in principal plus interest. What will you be collecting in total out of that 100 rupees by end of June?
So basically 50%. If we have to collect 100 rupees, what we projected is 50 rupees, but we are highly confident that we will collect more than that. This 300 crore is 50% of 100.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shamal Lahon from Edelweiss. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking my question. Ma'am, my question is, in the scenario that center meetings continue to be difficult to be held, what is the alternate plan that is practical and logistically manageable for your loan offices? I mean, is there a different model that you have thought of, or it will be a similar just doing smaller groups like you talked about earlier?
I think we are planning to resume center meetings at least from 1st July. The only thing is we are in the process of finding an alternate venue for the center meetings. What we need is a bigger space as we have to maintain some physical distancing for the center meetings. Right now, most of the center meetings are conducted in the borrowers' houses. So while finalizing the venue for the center meetings, we did not make it a point to look for a bigger space earlier. But right now, so we are finding an alternate space for the center meetings. From 1st July, we are going to resume all the center meetings because there is no alternative and there is no way that we'll be able to meet all our borrowers without conducting center meetings. That is next to impossible. And again, so we cannot double up, and again, that will big time increase our cost. So we cannot double up our loan officers. So that is not possible. So to be able to meet all our customers on the scheduled day, so there is no alternative that we can really come up with now. So from 1st July, we are going to resume all the center meetings. We are already informing all our borrowers, but from 1st July, they have to come to the center meetings. The only thing that we are insisting is they have to follow physical distancing and they have to wear mask. And however, if the current venue for the center meeting is very small, we are just in the process of looking for an alternate space for the center meeting.
Understood, ma'am. And this is a clarificatory question on your earlier comment. For now, it is the groups that are meeting are about 1/3 of the current center size, right? I think more or less, approximately.
Not that every center has 3 groups. There are a good number of centers with 2 groups also. So either half or 1/3.
Okay. So I just want to ask a question, backing up the question that the previous person asked. So my question here is, when you talk about the 300 crore collection in June, what is the accrued, what is the accrued due that, the amount that will be due from the beginning of, the lockdown that will be collected by June? I think that was the point of this question, and that's what I'm also trying to understand. So what is that has accrued and not being received, and what portion of that will be, do you expect to get paid by the end of June?
So, as you see, we have been collecting installments, from the day that we resumed operations. So we have not started collecting the accrued interest, but however, from next Monday onwards, so far, out of 24 lakh borrowers, around 6 lakh borrowers, they have paid installments, one or more than one installment. So which means they have not fully availed a moratorium, but the remaining 18 lakh borrowers, they have opted moratorium. So for these borrowers, now we accrued interest. So in terms of what is the interest that got accrued is, So it will be like 24%. So 2%, 4% of 7,000 crore. So 280 crore.
Okay. Okay. No, my point was, madam, to understand, what all when I say accrued, I meant the principal portion and the interest portion that has remained unpaid because of moratorium, because of lockdown. When do we expect all of them to become current?
That as a demand. Since we have given moratorium, so again, like I cannot consider that as a demand in this month, because so if I'm demanding that installment to pay in June, I cannot technically consider that as I have given moratorium in during April, May, because like that has to be collected at the end of the loan period.
Understood, ma'am. So another question is, I know you have already commented on what portion of your borrowers are looking to take moratorium. Are you seeing the second announcement of moratorium, the extension of announcement of moratorium having any impact on how you have to on the borrowers in terms of their ask for a moratorium, or did you have to change anything in terms of communication because of the second one? Not really.
Moratorium too, somehow it has not gone into people. So nobody is really talking about moratorium 2. So basically at this point in time, if somebody is running a tea shop, he is really looking at how to restart the tea shop. He is looking at gathering all his equipment. He is looking at buying whatever the material that he requires. He is looking at getting back his customers, and he is looking at getting back his day-to-day income. So he is not looking at repayment holiday. Rather, he wants to get a loan of 5,000 or 10,000 to start the tea shop. So I don't think that borrowers at this point in time are looking for repayment holiday. Rather, they are looking for a loan to start their unit, restart, and again get their income back.
Understood, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of S. Parmeshwaran from JM Financial. Please go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. So, a few questions from my side. Firstly, this observation that is mentioned in the notes relating to the pricing of credit. So, is this related to the FY18 inspection report, or is this something new that has come? So, because we have been mentioning about the inspection report, the FY18 inspection report in our notes previously.
So, what is mentioned? You are referring to which?
Yeah, note number 12, where you are referring to the RBI inspection report regarding excess interest charge.
So that is FY19 inspection report.
Okay. So this, when we say that the impact has been recognized, what was the impact? It has been recognized this quarter?
So we made a provision, 13.5 crore provision towards that.
Okay. So it's in the provision line?
Yes.
Okay. And another question I wanted to ask is 43 crore which we recognize in other comprehensive income, net gain on fair value of loans this quarter, which has, I think, come into the net worth. So what exactly is that?
So because we, as per Ind AS 109 requirement, when we hold the portfolio to collect the contractual cash flows as well as sell the portfolio, we will have to do a fair valuation of the entire loan portfolio through other comprehensive income. So basically, we'll have to project the cash flow of the entire portfolio and discount it by the latest lending rate, which is 21.87 as of 31st March 2020. And because we have portfolio yielding interest rates of 24%, 24.5%, because of the rate reduction, this fair value gain had come through. If you look at the other comprehensive income, the gross fair value is 43.3 crores, and there is also an income tax effect, which is 10.9 crores. So the net flow into the net worth is 32.4 crores.
Okay. So this is relating to the DA portfolio, is it?
No, this is related to all the other portfolio, which is notional and which will get reversed over a period of time. Gradually, the 7,000 crores, which is currently yielding 24%, as it moves to, let's say, in the future, the entire portfolio moves to 21.8 or 21.5%, this fair value gain that we have recognized will get neutralized over a period of time.
Okay. Got it. And